Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'd like to thank the Honourable Kepa for this question. Mr. Speaker, sir, of course, this reconstruction and rebuild program that the Honourable Member is actually talking about was in the aftermath of the strongest storm that ever hit the Southern Hemisphere, Category 5 cyclone that hit Fiji and left a trail of destruction. It wiped off 1/3 of the value of our GDP, about approximately $1.3 billion US. In respect of schools specifically, Mr. Speaker, sir, the CIU, or the Construction Implementation Unit, was initially given 166 schools to rebuild, of which 143 have already been completed. The remaining schools will be completed by July of this year. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are three categories of the rebuilds. One of them was the government actually funded it entirely on its own, and the CIU was completely responsible for the rebuild. In other words, they brought in the consultants, they brought in the engineers, they brought in the construction company, they went through a tender process through Fiji Procurement Office. The Government Tender Board awarded the tenders, and that was one process which we funded. The other methodology, Mr. Speaker, sir, is something that we had come up with, which is called adopting a school. In the adopting a school, there were two categories. One was where a particular country or organization said that we will fund School X for the rebuild, or we will fund a particular building in School X. And so countries like Japan, India, United Arab Emirates, an organization like Fiji Ports Authority, and various other organizations, the Red Cross, Friends of Fiji/China, they're the ones who actually said, here's the money, or we'll choose School X, tell us how much it's going to cost, we'll give you the money, rebuild that school. So again, the engineering, the architecture, and let me remind members of this parliament that over 90%, 95% of all the schools that we rebuilt did not even have architectural plans or engineering plans. We had to do it from the scratch. So those ones that were adopted, CIU did the rebuild. They were completely in charge of it. There was another category of adopt a school, and they were undertaken by Indonesia, the US Navy, Australia, and New Zealand. Australia had responsibility for Coral Island. They are still building the schools. I know some members have raised that. That's the responsibility of Australia. I understand they've got some problems with the local contractors. New Zealand adopted schools in Vanuatu. They've already completed. It's all done and dusted. Indonesia said that we will rebuild QVS. US Navy said St. John's College in Levuka. Now, there was absolutely no carriage of responsibility by CIU in respect of the rebuilds in those four areas, or those four schools. So Vanuatu, Koro, St. John's, and also QVS. The materials they bought, the supervision that they underwent through was done entirely by them. Of course, at that time, Mr. Speaker, sir, in hindsight, because there was such massive devastation, the way it was dealt with, well, okay, they're offering to do it, let's take the assistance. So they dealt directly, Mr. Speaker, sir, with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport, or MOIT. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the QVS specifically, the Indonesian government, as I said, dealt with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. After they've done the plans, etc., CIU is brought in, but they're recommended to them to engage local consultants, local engineers for supervision and sign-off process. However, that suggestion was not considered. As a result, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, the construction at QVS, they brought in prefabricated building material. In fact, I was shown a sample of it, but it's quite heavy duty, and I was going to bring it in Parliament for the effect of it. But it's actually quite thick, and it can be, in fact, it can be quite toxic. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, following the reconstruction by Indonesia, it was subsequently discovered that the construction was not up to scratch. It did not meet the local standards. So when CIU was asked to go and fix up the problem, then they discovered that the problem was a lot bigger. And we all know that. The reality is that we need to rebuild. So what have we learned from this? We have learned that next time if anybody wants to adopt a school, we must insist, indeed, we must only accept that assistance if we have complete control of it, in respect of them engaging local consultants, local construction companies, adhering to local building codes. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, what's actually happened In what will happen at QVS, there's already a final master plan of QVS that's already been undertaken, prioritizing the teaching and learning area first. For a 1x6 double-story classroom, the tender has already been called and evaluated. Preparation of another set of tender document for dormitory is underway to accommodate 800 students, Mr. Speaker, sir. And that, again, the tenders will be going out for that. In respect of St. John's College in Dawadi, it is the reconstruction was carried out by the US Navy during the intermediate rehabilitation phase after TC Winston. The existing materials that are left after the havoc of TC Winston, we found later on, together with new material, was actually mixed together, such as roofing iron and steel cold form purlins, were used without any engineering plans or material specifications. And the purlins, Mr. Speaker, sir, were cut and welded on site to use as trusses, commonly known as rafters, what we call rafters in Fiji. And the same materials were used for the purlins, but installed wrongly, and I've been shown the angle at which it should be and how it wasn't. Accordingly, as a result of that, when we had similar strong winds subsequently, it did not withstand those winds. So that's why the damage took place, Mr. Speaker, sir. So for the honourable member, we, of course, many of us have learned from this particular problem. All the schools that have been reconstructed by CIU after the wake of Josie, Kenny and Gita, nothing was damaged. They withstood all those strong winds. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also wanted to highlight to you that all the schools that we have rebuilt, we've actually given a cyclone certification. So the individual school managements can actually go out and get cyclone insurance. So when the Honourable Prime Minister has gone to certain schools, apart from handing over the key, he actually gives the cyclone certification for those particular buildings. And I've got all the details as to how much wind they can withstand, etc. Mr. Speaker, so there's one other issue that I wanted to highlight that has never been done in Fiji before. We, Mr. Speaker, sir, have now engaged in what we call the capital projects database, where all the schools that we have rebuilt, that were rated what we call R3 to R5, will be numbered and properly tagged according to its wind speed compliance, together with all the project completion documents, such as building plans, engineer certificate, and the materials database. So if you go to all the schools that we've already rebuilt, you can click on the button and you'll find, for example, building in some school in Tavua, every single material, the certification is all there. So next time there's any damage, we know exactly what to use. We know exactly what was blown away. That has never been done. It, of course, will help us with all the planning, also help us in terms of calling for tenders, etc. In the future. It will help us to prepare for future budgetary provisions and, Mr. Speaker, sir, which we are not very good in Fiji, periodic maintenance. Periodic maintenance is very, very critical, and for future extensions, Mr. Speaker, sir. So to answer the honourable member's question, what will we do differently in respect of those two schools? Most definitely we would insist upon them complying with local standards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.